Right, I'll be the shush kaba.
Pinya. Right.
Good morning, I'm sorry for doing it. Right. Ben was the only one ready.
Sorry?
You were the only one ready on time.
Well, yeah. I didn't have time to cook. I didn't get the time.
Why did you get a time? Right, it's a really long day.
It's a quick nap, no?
Who's making a mitzvah? Who made a mitzvah?
Double one.
Nachikaz. Which one's Nachikaz?
The
Where?
guys know where. No, here, there.
With the talisman.
Huh?
With the talisman.
Yeah.
On which cuts it is. Okay. We're up to Nundalad Amud Aleph. About 54. About 15 lines down. We just finished that this word is like a chasana. You have to chap around. You don't get, you don't chap, you don't get. We're up to Omar Lei Rav. I'm going to go a bit fast. Omar Lei Rav, Amnona Bini, my son, if you have the opportunity, hativ loch, do mitzvahs. Shein b'shur tanug, ben amovis ismamea. When you're in death, you can't do mitzvahs and you can't delay. Death comes and doesn't wait for anybody. Instead of working to do mitzvahs, I should earn a lot of money in order that my children should have a lot of money when I die. Who can tell you what your children's success is going to be like? Grass, some parts of it grow, some of it die. You don't know what the future holds regarding the next patch of grass. So don't spend your life searching for the success of your children. First of all, some shouldn't say, maybe your children will be Rishoyim. Others say it doesn't mean that. It means that your children will have their own source of success. It's not your business to worry about them. He's got nobody to accompany him. That Levias Chen is the company of favor. Person learning Torah, it's as if he's got a good company. Person got a sore throat. It's a necklace for your throat. So it's like healing for your throat. First got a stomach ache. That it's a healing for your stomach. If his bones hurt him, it's a strengthening to the bones. His whole body is not well. His whole body will get better. Normally, when you go to the doctor, if your hand hurts, he gives you one medication. Your leg, something else. Your stomach, something else. That's midas boss of a dom. It's good for the hand, not good for the stomach. Good for the stomach, but it's not good for the hand. It's one medication, one level of medication, and it heals the entire body. So you see the gadlus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Torah and the healing that it gives. That is good when it's in your stomach and it's good when it's on your lips. When are they pleasant? When you guard them in your stomach, how do you guard them? When you express them on your lips, they'll be guarded inside you. So that's a repetition of what we said yesterday, that you have to express words of Torah and you shouldn't read them quite. From another source, with the reply of his mouth, when he's actually saying it with his mouth. When he learns at the right time. Miri explains that he learns Sukkah by Sukkah. A person has to make sure to learn the applicable halachas at the time. When is it near for you? When you say it with your mouth. If you don't say it with your mouth, you don't get the same schos. That Hashem gives the person tzaddik what he wants, and whatever he asks for with his lips. So we hear the more darshans derech. When does Hashem give a person what he wants? When he expresses it with his lips. He asks a contradiction in the spot, where he desires in his heart. Even before he says anything, Hashem gives it to him. Whatever you want in your heart, Hashem will give it to you. You give him what he asks in his lips. So mashma only when you ask for it. When if he gets what he wants in his heart, he actually has to daven for it. That means a real tzaddik gets things even when he doesn't ask for it. Hashem just gives it what he wants in his heart. Those three words, they all represent. It means forever and ever. Netzach la'olam means forever, or without fight. So we see that Netzach and La'olam are put next to each other synonymously. And that's to teach you that both Netzach and La'olam means forever. Ad Olam Selah. We see the word Selah and Olam are put together to teach you, just like the word Olam means forever, Selah also. So La'olam Voed is actually repetition. La'olam forever. Voed is also forever. The idea is that Ulam is in this world, but Ed is also in the future world. Nice, okay. Similar Now we're going to go to Darshan about learning Torah. A necklace is always loose. So too, a person has to be loose. What does that mean, loose? That a person has to be amiable. What's the word? Amicable. There's another word for it. Amiable, I was trying to say, but amicable is also short. Plus, that's be like a necklace which is loose. A necklace can't always see it because when you wear a necklace, parts of it are hidden, parts of it are revealed. Then tamudim is kind of if a person is always revealed, meaning he's always out and about, and everybody can see him all the time, he never goes home to learn. In tamudim is kind of his cheeks are like a plot of a garden of perfume. Like a garden. Shakol doshin, but everybody treads on it. And this perfume, that everybody gets perfume from it, meaning that he teaches Torah. Tamudim Miskayim. Bimlav in Tamudim Miskayim. Otherwise, his Torah is not Miskayim because he's not trying to teach other people. In Mason, one most aspects of his cheeks, which doesn't get obliterated. Cheeks, if they're like stone, meaning that they don't stop learning just because it's tired. But he keeps going. So then Talmud Miskayim, he will not be successful. Chos can also mean engraved, and it can also mean freedom. Had the first luchos not been broken, because it had been engraved. And therefore, we would have never forgotten. No nation would have ever ruled over Kali Yisrael had the first law was not been broken. Freedom. So we're translating engraved that will never be forgotten, and freedom that would have never been enslaved by any nation. That Hashem gave the present in the midbar. The person makes himself like a desert. That everybody treads on it, and it's hefker. That means people, a desert is not a place of pride, it's a place of free, where people are not holding by the honor. Tamudim is kind of Bimlav ain't Tamudim is kind of Rav Yosef was annoyed with Rava. The Gemara in the Dom says why he was annoyed. The Gemara there says that basically there was a shine in the Beis Medrash, what does the word alal to mean? And Rav Yosef asked him what the word alal to meant, and then Rava afterwards disagreed. Yosef was irritated that he had asked the question, got an answer, and then disagreed. So Yosef was annoyed with it. So what happened was, when he came to Erev Yom Kippur, I'll go and ask him Mechila. I saw brought down from Rabbi Yashib that part of the mitzvah of Erev Yom Kippur is to go through a little bit of the shame of asking Mechila, because the shame itself is Mechapa. And if a person gets mechila without going through that shame, then he hasn't got the. For Bavinod Chaveru says it, because since you cause yenim embarrassment, you have to go through a certain amount of embarrassment. Okay, so he went to ask him mechila. Also ask mechila shamid kamaskle kasa. Rabbi Yosef was blind, and he saw that Rabbi Yosef's gabba was pouring him a cup of wine and Erev Yom Kippur. Omar Leis, Rabbi said to the gabba, "Have li vimzake. Let me pour the wine, and I'll serve it him. Vimzake ano. Yoav lei mozge ketetami." Poured in wine. This wine tastes like Rava's wine. Rava had a specific way of diluting wine. Some say Rava would always dilute it by 3 parts. Other people dilute it by 2 parts of water. So his was more diluted. Others say that Rava was a very skilled mix of wine, and the way he would blend the wines would make a particularly good taste. So he recognized that it was Rava's Rava. I know who, because he was blind. So he recognized from the taste. He said, yes, indeed, it's Rava. Don't sit down at the fascist standing to explain to me this possible. Rabbi Yosef was annoyed with Rava. He wanted to teach him humility. So what he did was he quoted him a pasuk which you can dash from it the concept of humility. So he said to him, explain to me this pasuk. It's a pasuk in Parshas Chukas, which describes the Be'er, which basically is just describing how the well would go from place to place following Klal Yisrael. But over here is going to dash in the Derech Drush how a person has to behave in life. That if a person behaves like a desert, as we explained previously, the people just tread on it, turn it, no matana, gets to as a present. The Kimmon matana, Nochle Kail, Hashem takes them as an inheritance, Shanema matana Nachlia. The Kimmon Shanochle Kail, Oila Legdula. Then eventually he gets to greatness. And if a person makes himself humble, learns Torah, then eventually he'll become great. Shanema Manachliel Bomos, Bomos means high. If he makes us lead boy, if then he becomes arrogant, Akadosh Baruch Hu mashpila, then Hashem will throw him down. Shanema Bomos Hagai, from the heights. Guy means to the valley. So from the heights he's thrown down to the valley. If there's true and then Akshbochu will lift up all the valleys, meaning that those who humble themselves, Akshbochu will lift them up. Now the Pasuk says that your animals will live there and you're prepared with your goodness for the poor of Hashem. That it grabs food and eats it. It makes the food horrible and smelly and then it eats it. Then you'll be successful. So Rashi got two mahalachim in this Gemara. We shouldn't discuss it at great length. What does it mean? One mahalach Rashi says, which he does not like, but we shouldn't bring it, is that an animal is not fussy. Meaning, if you ever see an animal eating a dead carcass, you think to yourself, I'll never eat it. It's disgusting. It smells. Sometimes the animals even urinate and things like that around it, and it doesn't disturb them. So too, a Talmud Chacham shouldn't be particularly about his food. Just eat it. That means that also animals eat quickly. They grab the food and eat it. So a Talmud Chacham shouldn't take a long leisurely thing, spend hours preparing his food and then make it the most glamorous food. A person should just get on and eat with his food and then afterwards go back to his learning. Rashi does not like this mahalach, because Rashi says it means that the Talmud Chacham doesn't behave with the midas of Derech Eretz. And the Talmud Chacham is supposed to behave with Derech Eretz, because otherwise it's a chilul Hashem. Others say we're talking about to be in private or in public. In private, he's allowed to get them to eat quickly in order not to. I think I was once sitting by a Talmud Chacham, and he ate without taking his eyes off the sefer, and it made a huge impression on me. I have never been able to do that. So it is a greatness. I know, but come on, you try and do it. Never to take a food. He literally learned all the time. Literally all the time. As children told me, one of his sons was an Avich, told me that whenever he goes to visit his father, he finds he comes away feeling guilty like anything. Because his father just sits and learns all the time, even when he's sitting and eating. Okay, a person can do it, it's a greatness. The nicer, another pshat the Gemara says is, another pshat Rashi says is, that animals, they kill and then they straight away save the prey for other places. So he says the same thing at Talmud Chacham when he learns Torah. What he should do is he shouldn't leave it alone, but he should straight away do chazal. That means he shouldn't. What's the word for it? He shouldn't wait for a long time to do chazal. Do chazal immediately. Oh, what's it mean to make himself dirty? He says like this. Sometimes a person's got a question, he's embarrassed to ask it. And Talmud Chacham shouldn't be embarrassed to ask any question. So in that way, that's the two expressions. So he eats straight away and makes himself dirty. So we've got two ways to explain it. Either it means regarding fasting or is regarding chazal learning. If a person does so, he'll get a beautiful meal to the poor of Hashem. Who's the poor of Hashem? As a Talmud Chacham, who in his own way can be poor. A person guards a fig tree and eats its fruit. Why is the turkey better fig? A fig tree is very unique. I once actually went to a farm, and the farmer told me this is true. What's special about a fig tree? Continuously. And what happens is, apples, there's a month when they all ripen. The figs are not. There. Apples are seasonal, figs are not. And there's a place called Not Ketumim in Eretz Yisrael. If you ever go there, it's like a beautiful farm. And it's got there all the different fruits and things that we go in Eretz Yisrael. And it says there, They grow the whole time. They don't stop growing.
Yeah,
And what
only
happens?
in the Jewish shops, you only get it around 2
I tell you, the problem is they're very infested. I don't know if it's so easy to eat. Every time you come there, you find more figs. After the Torah, every time you learn Torah, you find more. And now the Gemara says in a similar way. Why is Torah compared to certain kinds of deer? The womb of a yellow is very, very narrow. That gives extra pleasure to the male counterpart, to the female, because there's more, when it's tighter, there's more pleasure going in and out. Anyway, so the Chaviva Abel calls Shov Shor, so she gets pleasure every time, because Shov Shor, as if it's the very first time having nations. After the Chavina Amdel Shov Shor, Shov Shor, it's as if it's the first time. I say a word over here, you're married. I hope to get upset about this. But Yehuda says, what's the Gemara saying over here? Just like, there's a certain tightness the first time, so this Yola has it every time, the same thing. He says, what's the pleasure? The pleasure is because you have to force the way through, that it's a struggle and the tightness. So he says like this, he says that when the person has to learn something which is deep, so then he struggles to get through, to understand it clearly. And when he gets through and he gets it clear, so that is the same kind of pleasure. And you're supposed to find that pleasure too. Some people say to themselves, if it's smooth, it's geschmack. If I have to start thinking and working it through, then I can't be bothered, it's not geschmack, it's the contrary. When you have to push yourself a little bit, when you have to push, then you get much more pleasure. But that's why the Gemara uses such an interesting kind of mashal to explain the geschmack of Torah. The Shemal gives favor to those who learn it. The idea of is compared to the best. As long as a child tries to suckle from it, he finds more and more milk. After the Torah, he finds more and more milk, and he finds more and more pleasure. The person becomes foolish through the love of Torah. He would sit and learn in one place. And his coat was left somewhere else. Why? He was so engrossed in learning, he would lose his coat. I remember when I was in Yeshiva, they always said he stood with Ron Govitz once walked into the Beis Medrash, holding galoshes on a cold winter snowy day. And they said to him, why are you holding your galoshes? He said, my wife said to me, don't forget, Avram, to take galoshes with you. It's raining outside. So he carried the galoshes all the way to the Beis Medrash in order to think. And I have to tell you this other story. This person who happened to told me this story. I found out the person told me, the trustworthy person. He told me, I can't say the name, it doesn't matter. He's in Vienna, he said that he once asked for chavus with Ron Govitz Friday night. So Ron Govitz said, okay, because he had a special connection. So his wife brought in a plate of cake. So his mom said to eat. He was too embarrassed. So Rob had one piece, and then another piece, and then another piece. When the whole cake was finished, he turned around to Rav Dylan and said to him, if she could be made to be without a michya, I'm worried that I never had it his eyes. So he had the embarrassment to tell him that he hadn't actually eaten anything. Bob laughed. He'd eaten the whole plate of cake without realizing because he was so engrossed in his learning. Oh, but the person came to take it, and what's supposed to solve? They found the snake. That means because he was so engrossed in learning, he was saved from the snake. The snake was ended up being in his coat. This is a apostle which Devorah Neviah sang when she was victorious over which battle? Who did she destroy? Who did Devorah win? Sisra. Don't know your history. No, that is Yod chopped his head, but Devorah was the commander. Who's the people who ride the donkeys? Because they travel from place to place to teach Torah. And they make it as bright as the afternoon. That they teach Torah, make it bright. They judge fairly, truthfully. Those who go they go and teach Chumash. Our derech is already a pathway, they've gone much more direction. Mishnah, that's already people by Mishnah, they've already gone much further, that they're able to already have a proper path. Sichu talk, even when they just schmooze, it's Torah, because to have a person who learns Gemara, everything he does is Torah. Sorry, full stop. What's supposed to mean? So we dash the word yachruch as abbreviation. Yichya, yarich. It's not the kind of abbreviation we have. The word yachruch can stand for the word yichya, to live, and yarich, to have a long life. Lo yichya v'lo yarich yam inside the Ramai. Somebody who tricks and pretends that he knows Torah, but he doesn't really, he won't live long. Somebody who tricks, meaning that he constantly doing chazor in order to remember his learning, which is like a kind of trick, in order to remember his learning, he will live a long time. Imagine you hunt birds. If every time you catch a bird, you break its wings, then you have a lot of birds at the end of the day. You won't have. It's a very interesting marshal. The basic is if you catch a lot of birds and you don't do something about it, at the end of the day you have no birds at all. So to too, you don't do chazal, you'll have left nothing. If you break the wings every time, then you'll have something to keep. In Oisad to also chabilos, which does in the word hevel as a bundle. If you make your Torah as bundles, mismite, meaning that if you take a big bundle of Torah without understanding any specific part, you'll end up with nothing. Vimlav, if a person learns bit by bit, but eventually a person gathers. Every day you do one daf, eventually you see you cover quite a lot. Amar Rabbi Yodu Abulai Milsa B'Ovi Allah and the over that don't do chazal. I did chazal, and therefore Torah remained in my hand. A person has to make sure to do as much chazal as possible. Tonu Abul Kitza said the Mishnah. How did Moshe Rabbeinu teach the Mishnahs? Torah means Moshe Loman Piagvor. Moshe would learn it from Hashem. Nichnas Aaron would come in. The Shonole Moshe Pilkoi, and Moshe taught it to him. Nistalik Aaron Yosef Yisrael Moshe. Aaron would sit to the left of Moshe. Left is always less important. So therefore, if you've got two people, Moshe would be on the right, Aaron would be on the left. The sons of Aaron would come in. Moshe would teach them to him. The children would move. Elazar was older, would sit to the right, and if someone was younger, would sit to the left. Aaron would get up and move over, because since the sons were there, it wouldn't be right that in front of the sons of Aaron, he should be sitting to the left. So he would move to the right of Moshe.
Moshe will be on the left.
No, because then you've got four sons, so the sons would sit on the left, Aaron on the right. No, because it'll be in the middle. It means you've got Aaron on one side and the sons on the other. So Moshe would be in the middle. Being in the middle is even more important than being on the right.
Even if you're on the left.
Because
there's an even number.
It's impossible. It's impossible. What can you do? We'll discuss it later.
Should have not carried on sitting and just learned it? I've been Torah moving around every time.
The Gemara says your point to Chaim. Have extra Chaim. Nichnasus Kedim. As Moshe would then repeat over everything. Nichnasus Kedim v'Shadar Moshe Pirkon. Nistalkus Kedim. Nichnasu Kolam v'Shadar Moshe. So then this Kedim can teach them the people to teach them. There used to be at Aaron Aaron's heard it 4 times. Once by himself, once with his sons, once with the elders, once with the whole Kalisah. We had one of the sons only heard it 3 times. Shloisha. We had Zakenim Shnayim. We had Kol Adam. Everything else has only heard it once. So therefore, the Stalek Moshe would then go. V'Sholan Aaron Pilkon. And Aaron would teach it to them. So now Aaron's heard it 4 times from Moshe, and the sons of Aaron have heard it 4 times because they heard it 3 times from Moshe, once from Aaron. The Stalek Aaron Shonan and Bonov. So that he would teach. The sons would teach it. Pilkon. The Stalek Bonov Shonan Zakenim Pilkon. The wisdom of Kol Arbo. Everybody, the mice would hear it 4 times. It means Moshe would say it 4 times, once to Aaron, his sons, the Zkenim and to Kalisah. Aaron would hear it all 4, then Aaron would repeat it, then the sons would repeat it, then the Zkenim would repeat it, and everybody would know it, everybody would have heard it 4 times. Aaron learned from the greatest Rebbe ever, and Moshe learned from the greatest person, Hashem. And nevertheless, you had to hear it 4 times. A person who's hearing it from a fool, who's heard it from a fool, they should hear it 4 times. How do you know that you have to keep teaching it until the Talmud actually understands it? Because it says, but they so teach it to Kalisol. How do you know that has to be organized? Not just to know, just be organized. Simo means to be placed. It has to be something which is completely placed in the mouth. How do you know that you have to explain the reasoning behind everything you said? Lifnei means in front of them, something which they can be clear in front of them. That is, a person who teaches Torah shouldn't just say, look, I've just said that the main issues you work out yourself. You've got to, as Rashi says in Parashas Mishpatim, you've got to set it out like a beautiful table. But what happens is, it's pleasant and exciting for a person to start eating from. Let everybody learn it from Moshe 4 times. And smoke it, they should learn from, they should get, what's the word for it? That in order Aaron and his sons should also get covered, therefore they made sure to learn it also from Aaron. Furthermore, if that's the case, they want to learn it from Aaron, so they should learn it only from Aaron. Let Moshe teach Aaron, Aaron teach his sons, the sons teach the Zkanim, and the Zkanim teach Klaisol. Why did they all have to be there for all 4 repetitions? And says the Gemara, so since Moshe learned it from Hashem, it's better to hear from Hashem. So we have 2 different things over here. One to hear it from Moshe because he heard it from Hashem. We want to hear from Aaron and his sons, give them covered. So therefore, they had to do this whole complicated arrangement that first Moshe would teach it to Aaron, then Moshe would teach it to Aaron and his sons, then Moshe would teach Aaron to the sons of the people, etc. And then they would all hear it, and then eventually everyone would do 4 times. He would always go back to Moshe. Whenever you have 3 people in a journey, the Rebbe should be on the right, in the middle, the Godel on the right, and the Kotten on the left. Because the Chachamim hold that it's not necessary. As Chaim said, it's a big tircha, bit of learning for him to get up and move. And so since he didn't get up and move, therefore it's no good. I was once walking with my father, and we walked past Man Rosh Hashiva, and he stopped me. I was only 11. Shiur came to my bar mitzvah, and then he was lifted a few months later. And he said to me, "You're doing a mistake." What was my mistake? I was walking to the right of my father. So you're supposed to walk to the left of your father. If your father's greater, you're supposed to walk to the left.
That's for just you and your father.
Is that your last memory? If I'm looking at you.
No, so let's say if Ben would be, what's the word for it? The son, it would be good. Ben would be the son, Moshe would be the father. Yes? On the father's left. You have to be on your father's left.
But if you've got 2 boys,
then yes, then the older one.
Should be on the right.
The Meiri says ancient Svar, he says like this, which hand is strong as your right? If Ben would be the son, and suddenly Moshe would need help, so what would happen? So Ben's right hand is ready to help him, and that's one of the reasons why he should do like that. Okay, says the Gemara. This is the most amazing Gemara. He taught it him 400 times. Yom Echad the mitzvah, they needed him to go to a mitzvah. I taught him 400 times, never kept it. What happened today? They said to you, there's a mitzvah going on. I switched off. You're about to go, I can't concentrate. Think about it. I'll teach it to you again. He taught him another 400 times. Do you prefer 400 years or to this guy for the you and your generation? I want me and my generation to be give them both. There's a lot of different titles here. First was ancient Tosos. The Tosos asked the Kasha that the Gemara Megillah asks, why was Vader live a long time? And the Gemara says a whole different reason. Not this Gemara, a different reason. So it says Tosos that actually he lived to be old. And then the story happened, and that was because he was very makbid to come to Beis Medrash first. The Gemara says, why was he live to be old? Because he was Beis Medrash first. And then afterwards, when he was an old man, he had this story, and then he lived another 400 years. That's what he says. The Marshal points out that first they offered him only one or the other, then they gave him both. Says the Marshal to show you that when a person cares about the generation, then he's zeichet to even more. We mentioned this a little bit briefly yesterday, that when a person has to see other people doing mitzvahs, a person needs to feel a sense of joy. It's not always easy when you see other people here. But Pedro could have said, let me get to Gan Eden, let me have the 400 years. No, he was concerned about the generation, that all of them should be zeichet. And that's really the word, the Ava Minim. That we tie them all together, and everybody knows the Vod, that the Esrog is the Torah mitzvahs, and the Avav is not, etc. So the Derech Hashem writes this, and he says like this, that you can think to yourself, okay, and some of the Avav wants to be next to the Esrog. Why would the Esrog want to be next to the Avav? He says, on the contrary, when the Esrog elevates the Avav, then the Esrog itself becomes elevated. Because when a person, that we're all Baruch Hashem Esrog, we'll learn Torah, we'll do mitzvahs. So there's people out there, we think to ourselves, why should my mitzvahs be mechaper for all the people in South Manchester that are not bothering? The answer is by we do mitzvahs with the intention that they should also steig, we are zeicher that we steig further. Yes, that's what Sosananta said that. If we're not makbid on our learning, something is my powers will marry out. The Derech Hashem is even more. He says it's a bit like mountain climbing, where what happens is you strap each other to ropes in case one of them slips. So the question is, one who's weak and he's about to slip, he can somehow is tied to ropes. One on the head of the pack, and he's a good climber, why is himself tied to ropes? The answer is because he gets paid for it and he gets extra schar for it. When we are tied to people, we get extra thing. It says only through signs. It means you have to remember like Rosh Hashanah, things like that. A simonim. Shoma of tachifim ma'ov oz alam kovid avovo. He said it's avovo. Om atum osan aslitu lo. You learn from there. And on v'acham aslitu lo. Hatziv loch tziyunim simloch v'geima. Asud tziyunim nater makes signposts for Torah. My mission is that tziyun mission of the simonim. How do it tziyun means a sign? Tachsiv lo etz mod v'bodo etz tziyun. When Mashiach comes, there'll be a big battle between Gog and Magog. And we'll actually lay this haftarah mitzvah Shem on Sukkot. Shabbos Chol Hamoed Sukkot. This year we'll do Shabbos Chol Hamoed, so it's first day, I think. And what happens is you'll find a bone and you'll build a sign that's the dead bone of Gog and Magog. I say moedoim la Torah. Moedoim. What does moedo means? Moedois. What's the moedois? It's signposts. That's the moedois. You should make signposts for Torah. You should make fixed times. You shouldn't have a temporary time. You should have a fixed time every day you learn. No, you know what? We'll start that next time. Should we get to the 8 lines? What do you think? Okay, it's easy. Yeah, so we'll do that. Lui Bashumaini is not in the heavens. In Bashumaini, if it was in the heavens, you'd have to go up to the heavens. You'd have to cross the sea to Torah. Torah is so important that if it would be in the heavens or across the sea, you'd have to cross for it. It's not in the heavens. Those who believe themselves to be so important and arrogant, like somebody in the sky. And not somebody whose desires is like the sea. The sea is very big. It's got huge desires. So you're not zeichet to Torah if you're a big Baal Gaiva or a big Baal Taiva. Not in Baal Gaiva. Not those who go across the seas for business. If a person gets too involved in business until his whole mind is completely consumed in it, he will not be able to be zeichet to Torah. Very good. Okay, I have a very, very good Yom Tov. And this is Shem, so tomorrow afternoon.
I don't need to put down where we're going to go.
Yes, put it down. So it's 10 lines down on the hill. I'll just press here. Have a very good Yom Tov, Chaim.
Down.